I did not like. Hello, everybody. Hi, replay viewers. I did not like the one that I did outside. I prefer to do it outside, but I didn't like the sound quality. I don't know why I'm having so much trouble with sound quality these days. I don't know what I'm doing differently. Hopefully, this is better. I'm doing it on my laptop computer. So I want to talk about Cain. I want to talk about religion. I want to talk about Egregores. I want to pick up where I left off from my previous video. This is take 2 of my previous video. So I want to pick up on the video that I did before that. Hopefully this one has better sound than the last one I did, even though I like doing them outside. But and it's winter, and I live in Colorado. But anyway, it is what it is. But in my first video, I talked about how Cain was a type of an egregore, which is something that we connect to that is other than us, that is a group thought form. I don't want to spend a lot of time with that. And before I get into the Cain stuff, I want to reference a couple of scriptures that are important, I think. The first one is in Matthew chapter 23, verses 8 and 9. And Jesus says very simply there, he says, don't call anyone on earth rabbi. And the word rabbi means teacher. So don't call anyone on earth your teacher, for you have one teacher who is Christ. And then he said, don't call anyone on earth father, for you have one father or one source who is in heaven. Now, what is he addressing there? Why is he addressing this with the rabbis? Because it was a very common practice in ancient Israel, in ancient Judaism, to find a rabbi. If you were going to become a student of the Torah, you would find a rabbi, and that rabbi would literally become your spiritual father. This paradigm was taken from Elijah and Elisha in the Old Testament. And so you would become that rabbi's spiritual son. And there are things written in the Talmud and other writings and commentaries on, what Judaism was like in the times of Jesus, where they said you should show more honor, or as much honor at least, I think even more honor, to your spiritual father than you would to your true father. So Jesus in Matthew 23, he's attacking the religious system. He's attacking that Pharisaical legalistic system, saying you bind up heavy burdens on people and you don't help them with them. And he's completely demolishing there this concept of spiritual fathering and having spiritual sons. Now, the Catholic Church came along through their concept of apostolic succession, which was done to undermine the Gnostic Christians. And now, even today, you call priests father. And I've always wondered, what does the Catholic Church do with that? Like, how can they call their leaders father when Jesus clearly said, don't do that? But the charismatic church in the last 30, 40 years has come along and done the same things. Kind of an offshoot of the shepherding movement, of the Kingdom Now movements. You have these people who call themselves apostles. This whole concept of spiritual fathering, you have to have spiritual sons. I got so much pressure in the charismatic movement to have spiritual sons. Where's your spiritual sons? And I never bought into that. I was never comfortable with it. It was one of those things intuitively that I stayed away from. I'll talk about that a little bit more later, but I want to come to a passage in Hebrews chapter 8 that also pertains to this. When Jesus is talking about the new covenant that he's going to make with Judah and Israel, he says, it's not going to be like the covenant that I made with you before when I brought you out of Egypt. And it was a covenant that was written and engraved on stones or tablets. Now, remember, they didn't have pages, they didn't have paper, they didn't have printing presses. So literally what he's saying is, if we want to make it modern, the covenant that I make with you will not be like the one that I made where it was written for you to read and conform your life to. He says, in contrast to that, he says, this is the covenant I will make with them in those days. I will write my laws upon their hearts, and I will put them in their minds. Nor shall anyone say to his neighbor, know the Lord, for they shall all know me, from the greatest to the least. So he's making it very clear that the transition in covenants with Israel and Judah was from an outward external covenant or writing to an inward writing of the heart, that the laws would be in the heart, that they would be in the mind, that it's something already put by God inside of you. And then he says, you're not going to have to teach your neighbor saying, know the Lord. You're not going to go to your neighbor saying, do you know the Lord? So this is crazy because the New Testament says of itself that under the new covenant, you're not going to be walking up to people and saying, hey, do you know the Lord? Do you know Jesus Christ is your Lord and Savior? Have you made this commitment or done these things? It runs in direct contradiction to what the scriptures that we claimed to follow when we were under that, what it actually says, that you will all know the Lord from the greatest to the least. So to enter into the new covenant is to enter into something that comes from the inside out, not something that's from the outside in. Now, let's bring this back to Abel. Someone asked me after my last video that I did back to Cain. Somebody asked me on the last video I did, why was Cain's countenance fallen? The word countenance could also be translated face. In the Hebrew, it's panim. It means the face. But in the Hebrew, it's also connected to glory when it talks about God's face shining on us. Or when Moses says, show me your glory, and God says, no one can see my face and live. So the panim has to do with your glory, and glory has to do with esteem. It has to do with your identity. So we know the story. Cain brings the fruit of the ground, and he offers it as an offering to the Lord. And Abel brings a living sacrifice. He brings part of his flock of sheep, and he offers that to the Lord. And it says that God had respect to Cain's offering, but not to Abel's. And so New Testament interpreters, Christian interpreters, come along and say, well, this is a foreshadowing of Christ's death for us, that God rejected the fruit offering and he accepted the blood sacrifice because God needs blood, and without the shedding of blood, there can be no remission of sins. And God is just kind of this bloodthirsty God that has to use blood to deal with sin and all that stuff. And so we elaborate on that, and we comment on that. But remember, these are the Jewish scriptures. And this is in the Torah. And in the Torah, God did not only accept fruit and grain offerings, he commanded Israel to bring fruit and grain offerings. So from looking at this passage within the Torah itself, it doesn't make sense that God simply rejected Cain's offering because it was fruit and accepted Abel's offering because it was blood. It doesn't make any sense. So why did God reject Cain's offering and accept Abel's? I think if we go back and we look at what Eve says when Cain is born, we get some really powerful insights into this. In Genesis chapter 4, verse 1, it says that Adam knew his wife Eve, and she brought forth a son, and she called his name Cain. And she said, in the New King James, it says this, I have acquired a son from the Lord. I have acquired a son from the Lord. In fact, the name Cain means acquisition or possession. It's the same thing. If I acquire something, I possess something. So she says, I am possessing a son from the Lord, and she names him possession or acquisition. Now, in the original Hebrew, it's not really clear that she said, I have acquired a son from the Lord. Actually, in the Hebrew, it's more like she said, I have acquired a son like the Lord, or I have acquired a son with the Lord. Now, remember, just a couple minutes ago, I talked about spiritual fathering and this whole thing that has grown into charismatic Christianity about having a spiritual father and having spiritual sons. And a spiritual son, this is my son in the Lord, you're saying the same thing that Eve said, I have acquired a son with the Lord. Well, Aaron, so what? Well, here's what's so what. First of all, if anybody sees you as an acquisition, you're in trouble. If anybody sees you as a possession, you're in trouble. And all church ministry is based on that. Most pastors want to grow their church. That means they need to acquire more people coming into their building. Evangelists want to go out and share Jesus. They want to win souls and win people to the Lord. That means they're acquiring souls, or they're acquiring people to their point of view. So this whole thing is driven with this Eve complex, or this Eve mentality. Now, why is this a problem? Because when you become someone else's possession, When you become an acquisition to someone else, they will place expectations upon you. It can be as simple as the evangelist going and saying you have to pray this prayer, or as complex as a spiritual father who's taking you through a discipleship program and imparting their knowledge into you. You have to conform to their knowledge. It can be as simple as submitting to the authority of an apostle or a prophet or a pastor. I have to put your opinion and your ideas above my own. It can be submitting to a covenant that is written on tablets of stone or written in pages. I have to submit myself to what's written in the pages. So that what actually happens is that I look at an outward standard or measure of who I am supposed to be, and then whatever does not reflect that from within, I have to cut it out. So that my identity within religion, my identity within relationships within churches, my identity within relationship with spiritual fathers and apostolic coverings and bishoprics that we belong to and church organizations and relational networks and denominations, I have to fit a certain mold, which means if there's parts of me that doesn't fit with that mold, I have to cut them off. So I become a cut out version of myself and I lose contact with my own authenticity. Now let's put this together with Cain and his offering. Now we know that God rejected Cain's offering after he looked at it. What we miss sometimes in the passage is that before God looks at Cain's offering, God looks into Cain. It says the Lord looked at or looked into Cain. That's the actual language there. The Lord looked into Cain and at his offering. Then God asks him the question, Cain, why has your countenance fallen? I had someone ask me after the last video, why was Cain's countenance fallen? Well, I think we get a picture when we start putting this all together. So Eve acquires a son from the Lord. She has expectations because God spoke to the serpent and said the seed of the woman would crush the head of the serpent, would undo the curse. So it's natural then, as soon as she has her first seed, as soon as she has her first born, her first son, she thinks, oh, this, more than likely, if you step into her mindset, more than likely, she's thinking, this is the fulfillment of my promise. This is what we do in church, guys. I have a vision for a ministry. I have a vision for a church. I have a vision for an evangelistic outreach. I have a vision to go and win souls. And when we see people, we see them as the fulfillment of what we think the vision was that God gave us. So Eve gets a vision from the Lord, and she sees Cain as the fulfillment of that. And I believe she starts putting these outward expectations on him. How do I know that? Because Cain was a tiller of the ground. Now, if you go back to Genesis chapter 2, you discover that when God made Adam, he made Adam, the first son, he made him from the dust of the ground. That was he formed him from the dust of the ground. That was his body. That was his connection to this outward world. But he wasn't alive yet. It wasn't until God breathed into Adam the breath of life. Listen very closely. God breathed into Adam the breath of life, and he became a living soul. So you have the human aspects of you, the physical aspects of you, the carnal aspects of you that are formed from the dust of the ground. You have the divine nature. When God breathed into Adam, I think that's speaking to us of the divine nature, the divine spark, our divine connection to source, our divine likeness, our eternal spirit, however you want to language that and understand that. But Cain is a tiller of the ground. So he's working really hard on his outward humanity. And I think he's working really hard on his outward humanity to live up to an identity that was not true or authentic to what was within him. He cultivated the outward life at the expense of the inward life, you could say. And so when God looks into Adam, he's looking into Adam to see if he can find what God placed within him. The actual life, the actual vibration, the soul codes, the destiny codes, the unique creation that God had put inside of Cain, and he's looking for it, and it's fallen. And the reason it's fallen is because he's been working his own humanity, trying to get fruit from it that he thinks he needs to have to be acceptable to the Lord. And that is the definition of religion. When I'm taking myself from the pages of a book, I'm taking myself from a spiritual father. I'm taking myself from an authority higher than myself, anything external to myself, and I'm making that my identity. I'm working really, really hard. I have to be like this to be a good Christian. I have to be like this to be acceptable to the Lord. And then I offer that as my offering, as my life up to the Lord, expecting him to accept it, and God rejects it because it's not resonating with who I am on the inside or who I am authentically. Can you see that? Does that make sense to you? So why does he accept Abel's offering? He accepts Abel's offering because Abel's bringing something that God gave, that has the life of God in it. He didn't work until something from the soil of humanity, he brought forth that which had the breath. And in fact, Abel's name means vapor. That which had the breath, that which had divinity within it. Now, I love Facebook, and I made a post a few days ago. I don't remember when I made it, just kind of off the cuff. I think it was Sunday. I was just doing some meditating and thinking thoughts through before I did my live video. And I made the post and I said, if all you do, that's the key word, if all you do is copy other people and share other people's information, you are living a secondhand life. I thought I was making a statement that was affirming. I thought I was making a statement that would make people think, and that's what I tried to do on there, is make people think. And I like the exchange and I like the dialogue, but I was surprised how many people came back in the comment section of that original post saying, oh, there's nothing new under the sun. What do you, I mean, like they got triggered, it seemed. There's nothing new under the sun. We only stand on the shoulders of those who taught us. What do you mean? All I do is, share what I get from other people. Like I was saying, it was wrong to do that. So I want to clear this up a little bit and help people see where I'm coming from. Of course, you're going to share information. I get information from other people. I share other people's posts. If I see something that's working, whether it's a therapeutic technique or it's a marketing technique or something that someone else is doing and it's working, I have copied those things. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with that. Here's what I'm saying. If all you do is spend your time trying to be a copy of someone else, then you have lost connection with your own unique soul code and your own unique and authentic self and vibration. I love to meditate. I do guided meditations. If I need something, I love to do guided meditations, especially if they're really good ones. And I've benefited greatly from that. But if all you do, if your only practice of meditation is to put earbuds in and listen to someone else guide you through an imagery or through an experience, what you're doing is you're vicariously sharing in what came from that other person. So you're still doing this same kind of copying thing. A lot of meditation for me is about knowing myself. It's about exploring the levels and the layers of my own consciousness. It's about getting to know myself and getting to know my own soul and what genuinely resonates with me. Like what are my values? What genuinely resonates with me? What life did I come here to live? Who am I as a person? I've discovered that more and more with meditation and exploring myself and studying myself and getting to know myself. Now, when I find through that process my authentic voice, my authentic vibrations, the things that are important to me, the things that I resonate with, the things that I vibrate with, then when I look out in my environment, I'm going to find things from other people that are going to enhance and feed and build upon what I've already discovered within about myself. So now when I share, I'm sharing in resonance with who I am, not in substitution for who I am. Am I representing who I am by the information that I share or the things that I copy from other people? Or am I substituting who I am with the things that I share and the things that I copy from other people? And that's the difference. So really, the story of Cain and Abel, if we quit seeing it as a natural historical story and we see it as a reflection of the conscious processes that go on within ourselves as we live this life, then the story here is this. Do not overwork your humanity trying to conform yourself to someone else's version of you or standard of who you think you should be. But spend time cultivating the inside, what God put into you when he breathed into you. Externalize the life that you were here to live from the inside out. Don't internalize a second down, hand me down life from other people that you then take and internalize and manufacture and cut and paste at yourself. Because if you do that and you offer that to God, God says, I reject that. But if you take what has the life of God in it within you, what has the passion and the zeal and the vibration of what you resonate with, and you present that, then you have something that God looks down on and is pleased with, at least within the context of the story. I hope that makes sense. I hope this comes across a little bit better sound-wise than my last video. I may leave both of them up. I don't know. But anyway, thank you for joining me. Those of you that have, those of you that watch them by replay, thank you for joining with that. And God bless you. And whatever time it is for you, morning, afternoon, evening, whatever it is, I hope it's great.